Alright, today I'm mixing things up. It's not Jeremy in the outdoors, it's Jeremy in the indoors. I'm doing a trainer ride on my road bike with the workout plan for today being doing a 20-minute power test. So start things off, did 10-minute warm-up, just easy spinning. I think I held 150 watts throughout the warm-up, and then made sure all my cameras were looking good, and then got started with the 20-minute effort. The warm-up felt pretty solid, loosening my legs up. I was feeling confident going into this power test. I've been putting down some good rides before today. I was feeling confident in what I could do. I was feeling confident in the power I could put down, and I felt like I had a good understanding of where my limits were at. And so I felt like the pacing was going to be good today. And the setup I was running for today was I have my Cannondale road bike set up on the trainer, and I had one water bottle, no electrolytes or any kind of supplements in there. It was just straight water, tap water, pure. And then I have a little towel because I get really sweaty by the end of it. I had a fan set up next to me, but I was just kind of in the zone and forgot to turn it on. And then for what I'm using to record my power, I have power pedals. They're the Garmin Vector 3 pedals, and those are connected to my little Garmin computer up on my stem. So, pretty good setup. At this point, I'm going to skip through the rest of the warm-up since, I'm just spinning. There's really not much to see there. Not much analysis for that anyways. So I'm just going to skip ahead to the start of the 20-minute interval. When I started off, I didn't have any power goal in mind for what I wanted to hit, and I didn't have any kind of strict pacing guide. For the beginning, I was just kind of go off feel and, just play it by ear. If I'm feeling good, bump it up. Not feeling good, try to hold pace, and if it's really feeling bad, drop it down so I don't burn out. So to start off, I just started spinning, pretty decent gear, nothing super hard, but definitely feeling a bit uncomfortable. It was an uncomfortable pace, which is I think a good point to start off for a test like this. And slowly climbing up wattage. I think by the 5-minute mark I was sitting at a 310 watt average. I got up above 300, and as I was pedaling up until this point, getting to that 5-minute mark, I was thinking about how I was feeling and trying to plan what I wanted to do for the rest of the ride. And the benchmark I had set for myself was that at 8 minutes I was gonna click up one gear and try to hold that, because I'd been holding the same gear for the whole first 8 minutes, and I was gonna click up one gear. So now we're at the 8-minute mark. I'm just clicking up that one gear like I had planned, because I was still feeling good by the 8-minute mark and thought it was go time. So I get going at this higher gear, and pretty quickly I start to realize that it was a big jump up between those gears. I think my wattage was sitting at 380, 370, 380, holding an 85 cadence, so not even, a super fast cadence, and I was sitting at a pretty high wattage. And I was just thinking, I'm not going to be able to hold this. Definitely not for the full 12 minutes remaining. And I didn't even know if I could hold it for 5 minutes. So I just kept pedaling, and I really want to be pushing through, but, I know it's not the right move for the pacing. So at 11 minutes, I drop back down a gear, so I don't keep burning matches, so I save a bit in my legs, because I figured it's better to be holding a lower wattage than to burn out at a higher wattage and then fizzle out by the end, because I figured if I drop down, I'll at least be able to maintain, and that'll end up with a higher average than if I just burn and try to, limp to the finish. And during this 3-minute period from minute 8 to minute 11, my average wattage was just consistently climbing. And honestly, I think that's most the reason why I even tried to hold it for 3 minutes, because it got pretty difficult. But it was crazy. It was just clicking up like it was clicking up like it was the time. It just kept going by like seconds. In the 3 minutes, my average wattage went from like I said, 300, 310, that kind of range. I'll say like 308 or 308 is what I'm going to use. And by the end of that 3 minute period, I was up at like 333, which is a pretty considerable jump in average over just 3 minutes. So I mean, it was definitely appealing looking at those kind of numbers, but still, I think I definitely made the right choice calling it off on that higher gear. And at minute 11, I did drop down like I said I would, and yeah, I am glad I did. Over the next few minutes, I started recovering a bit, but the recovery was quite minimal. I think that 3 minutes did end up hitting me pretty hard, although it definitely could have hit me way worse. So I'm glad I dropped that when I did. I'm proud of myself for that. Typically in the past, I had issues pacing myself for tests like this. I'd be fine when I'm out on a ride, but when I go down and say, I'm going to put down a ton of power, we're going to smash this test, I go out too hot and I burn out, and then I have bad results. So I'm proud of myself for pacing properly, but it was hurting. It was hurting real bad. I mean, I was recovering a bit. I wasn't quite going out as badly as I was during those 3 minute periods, but the gains were marginal. It was really, at this point, it was still just about holding on to the pace I had set for myself. I knew at this point I couldn't drop any more gears, otherwise I'd be losing a lot of power. And so I told myself, we have to hold this. We got 9 more minutes till the end of the test, and we gotta hold it. And I would say from minute 11 to like 14, I was doing a pretty solid job at that. Staying positive, just keeping those pedals moving. But by minute 15, I was hurting pretty bad, and it took some internal convincing to get myself to do it. And the way I went about convincing myself was just telling myself, like, hey, your legs hurt a lot, but you've done intervals before, you've done sprints, you know what it feels like for your legs to hurt. This isn't an unfamiliar feeling. It's definitely uncomfortable, way more than the rest of the test has been. Like, acknowledge that it hurts, you can't just tell yourself that you're not in pain, but, just know that despite that you can do this. Like, this, it is hard, but this is an effort you can do. And that was enough to get myself to stick with it and to keep pushing, but it was still hard. And so the way I got through it was I just stared at the clock. I just watched the time slowly get closer to that 20 minutes. I'd be like, all right, let's make it 30 seconds. And so I'd watch 30 seconds go by and be like, okay, you did that. 30 more seconds. And now by that point, I've gone from 15 to 16 minutes. I'm at 16 minutes now. It's a 20-minute test. I'm 80% done. You got 20% left. You're basically there. You can do 4 minutes. And then I'm looking at 17 minutes. Like, that's the next benchmark. I make it to 17. 17 and a half. Now that's 7/8 of the whole test done. You just got 2.5 minutes left. That's easy. You could hold this pace for 2.5 minutes. It's a 2.5 minute interval. Easy. And I kept doing that. And my goal was that if I make it to 19 minutes, I'd be able to use the same kind of train of thought that, hey, you're at 19, you got 1 minute left. And that would be enough to get me to put in one last hard effort, really kick up the pace for that last minute, and try to hold a really hard pace from 19 to finish. For those 8 minutes from minute 11 to minute 19, trying to get myself to stick with the pace, I let up about 5 watts, and I was sitting at like 325 average, which I was still super happy with. And I finally made it through battling it out. I finally made it to the 19-minute mark, and I knew I had to go. And so I clicked up a gear, and I just really got to work. I wouldn't call it a true sprint. Though, because the max wattage I hit was like 460. I mean, that's not a sprint, but for that whole 1 minute period, I probably averaged like 420 watts, and that was enough to bump me up a few more watts than the average. And I finished it out after a really hard effort at the end of a really hard 20-minute section with a 331 average. And I am just so stoked on how this test went. It was just absolutely phenomenal. Alright, let's have a look at the data. 20 minutes and a little bit of change. And for power, 331 average for a 20-minute power test. And 482 max, that's from that sprint. And then you can look at the rest of the data. I'm so stoked on this. For my body to weight ratio, that's a 5.3 watts per kilogram for the 20 minute. And when you do the 95% to find FTP, that's a 5.0 FTP, watts to kilogram. 5.0 is legit. Thanks for watching. So stoked.